KO the Kangaroo was a fairly average platformer that took a lot of notes from Crash Bandicoot. While it wasn't anything impressive, it wasn't terrible either. It was a cute little stab at the linear platformer. Despite being generally seen as a fairly mediocre game, KO did well enough to hop back in action in a sequel, KO Round 2, continuing on with that boxing theme even in the title. This is the most well-known game in the series. I was getting requests for this one by people that didn't even know there was a first game. I feel it being multi-platform was a big part of that. I mean, the first game was only on PC and Dreamcast, but this one came out on PC, GameCube, PS2, and Xbox. The PS2 version is the version I'll be playing for this video. I've never seen a copy of the thing for Xbox. Is that version rare or something? Did it not sell well, or was it even released on Xbox in North America? I know it released on Xbox in Europe. Man, that box art though, it perfectly encapsulates everything KO's all about. He's a cute little kangaroo on a big adventure. Much better than this trash heap of an excuse for box art we got in North America. What is going on here? He's got an army helmet, a bazooka? None of this is in the game. It's just another example of Americans trying to edgify the box art for their badass 12-year-old demographic. I mean, like, there's drawing angry eyebrows on Kirby, and then there's this. This is a miserable representation of the product you're buying, but what can you do? We can't afford to judge this book by its cover, so let's check it out already. The game's title screen is not at all what I expected. Instead of that bright blue sky, funky music, and logo, we've got a dreary night scene of a parrot flying around an island with ominous music playing. The story begins with KO aboard a pirate ship imprisoned in a cage. The parrot swoops into the room and agrees to help KO escape if he can... Wait a minute, look how far apart the bars are. He can just walk out of there. Anyway, KO agrees to help the parrot free the animals on the island. Remember the hunter from the first game? He's back, and with a vengeance. Not only has he kidnapped KO, but all of the animals on the island.
Hey, where you going?
Oh, wait a minute, they're talking. They couldn't do that in the first game. Okay, yeah, so this one's got voice acting, I guess. KO sounds adorable. He's got this baby Australian voice.
Hi, Bieber. I'll do my best.
KO's overall design has seen quite a facelift. He's a lot more anthropomorphized, wearing shoes and shorts and sporting the ability to speak. The banana yellow fur was also ditched in favor of a more natural-looking brown fur. I really like his updated design. It is a vast improvement. They made him look a lot better without sacrificing the cuteness appeal. He's still got those big ol' eyes, and I'm still a sucker for that. He controls a lot differently too. KO's standard punch attack is replaced with a 3-hit combo you can string together by mashing the button. Think Mario 64, you know, punch, punch, kick. The tail whip attack has been removed in favor of a rolling attack, which is much more helpful. Instead of just being an inferior version of the punch, the roll is handy for taking out those faster enemies that are harder to land a punch on. You can also use it to go like slightly faster, I guess. If you watch any speedrun of this game, they're doing that like every 2 seconds. The tail whip now takes the place of the aerial attack, which was a great way to still include it without making it obsolete. In addition to those improvements, KO now sports a double jump and a standard ground pound move that you'll use for bopping switches and fighting enemies. Obviously, with the expanded moveset, there's a lot more variety to the gameplay now. It now plays much more closer to something like Banjo-Kazooie or Rayman 2. Levels are no longer narrow hallways like Crash Bandicoot, though that said, it still is a linear game, just not nearly as restricted as the first one. The game even has a hub world, something that was completely absent from the first KO game. It's not much to write home about, though. I mean, you'd probably expect like a large area that leads to each separate level, but instead it's a fairly small area that really only exists for certain story scenes to take place at. There's really not much here, just a couple empty rooms and this pirate that needs 3,000 coins to let you pass. That happens at a certain point in the story, so until that happens, there's really not much point in spending any time here. I mean, instead of reaching a certain point in the hub world to enter a different level, you'll just talk to this bee thing and open a level select. Why even bother making a hub world if you're still gonna just use a level select? I suppose it's comparable to the face ship in Mario Galaxy 2, but, you know, at least there was actually things to do there. Disappointing hub aside, the game's not half bad once you get yourself going in the levels. The objective is yet again to simply reach the end, but there's a lot more going on between point A and point B now. You might have to find a switch to ground pound, or fight some dudes, or knock some things down to use as platforms. There's definitely a lot more variety this time around. Once again, you'll find yourself collecting coins, but instead of being to gather 1-ups, there's simply to add to the meaningless pile of collectibles. Coins aren't the only ones this time now, though. We've also got stars and crystals. Collecting 50 stars will improve one of KAO's abilities. For instance, getting the first 50 will give him a brief hover move after his double jump, making it easier to land jumps, a lot like the helicopter hair in Rayman 2. The crystals unlock bonus levels, which, as far as I could figure out, have absolutely no reward or purpose for completing them, so I don't even know why they exist. Do you want to chop down some trees by mashing the buttons? By all means, go for it. You won't get anything for doing it, but if for some reason you actually find that fun, go for it. Bonus stages made sense being in the first KAO game because playing them could reward you with more lives, but KAO Round 2 no longer uses the life system. Instead, dying will bring you back to the nearest checkpoint. You also don't have to put down your own checkpoints anymore either. Instead, there's just bells you'll ring. That's it, sweet and simple. Once again, KAO will find himself in a variety of locations, though they make a lot more sense this time. Everywhere you explore, whether it be a snowy mountain, a volcano, or an ancient ruins, are all located on the same island, believably so. This makes a lot more sense than his random trip to Mars and back in KAO 1. KAO can also once again ride in several vehicles, including a water barrel, a raft, and a motorboat. The snowboard's back too, and thankfully you no longer die when you bump into something. Crashing will simply take out a chunk of health, as it should. No instant deaths, thank God. There's also a couple of animals you can ride, the one with the most prominent role being a pelican who can temporarily fly. Getting a feel for flying is really weird. If you don't do it right, you lose all momentum mid-flight and fall off the stage. This kept happening to me until I figured out what it was you were supposed to do. You have to mash the button as fast as you can for it to work. You can't slowly tap it to try and carefully maneuver your flight forward. It's dumb. The game's combat also has a lot more depth. You can now lock onto foes and even throw boomerangs if you have any. Sometimes you'll find these things lying around which you can then use to throw at your enemies. Except they don't come back, which kinda defeats the purpose of it being a boomerang. I mean, even Ty the Tasmanian Tiger got that one right. You know, something about this game's combat is just... Wait a damn second. This is Rayman 2's combat. Straight up, even look at the way KAO hops around as he strafes left and right. That's Rayman 2. Unfortunately, KAO doesn't control quite as well as Rayman does, meaning these combat segments are nowhere near as well put together as those from Rayman 2. Jumping out of the way of oncoming fire seems impossible at times. It just doesn't have that same fluidity as Rayman does. It's not unusable though. It kind of works. I mean, taking damage isn't even that big a deal because KAO has so much health anyway. I'd say the combat, while brief, it's easily the worst part about this game. Not just the regular encounters either, but the boss fights too. I mean, there was a lot more work put into them than KAO 1, don't get me wrong, but they're still not that great. You know what, no, it's really just the first boss that annoys me. The attacks are not telegraphed well at all. It does not have proper sound cues or wind-up animations. They come out of nowhere and they're like impossible to dodge. But again, getting hit does not matter. It hardly affects you. KAO has way too much health and the game's extremely forgiving with health pickups too. It's a really strange feeling of annoyance. I mean, it'd be one thing if I couldn't beat the boss because of this, but despite getting my kangaroo ass slapped around by him, it was still extremely easy. It didn't piss me off, but it just left me disappointed. I mean, the boss fight may have been winnable, but it definitely was not functional. On the bright side, I do find the vast majority of the game to work as intended. The clunky combat is easy to ignore because while it doesn't function well, it's still pretty easy to squirm through. The dash power-up returns, but this time they're used in these chase segments where KAO will have to run from an enemy or a boulder or something. Going extremely fast is pretty fun, but I could never quite get a solid grip on the controls. It feels a little too loosey-goosey, and the fact that you're running towards the camera doesn't make things much better. Honestly, it's comparable to the Mach speed sections in Sonic 06. Though it's not quite that bad. There's also these slide bits which are pretty fun. You can, oh. Well, there's also a part where you climb a crumbling tower as the lava rises. You, can, ride a torpedo through the, Wow, yeah, you can really tell they were fans of this one, let me tell you. Okay, if KO 1 was Baby's first Crash, this is definitely Baby's first 3D Rayman. So much of it is straight up copied from Rayman 2, it's just all done not quite as well, not poorly, mind you, I mean, save for the combat, but anytime you're navigating an obstacle course or racing to the end of a stage, things work well enough to get the job done. Though it borrows a lot from Rayman 2 and is probably even considered a Rayman ripoff in the eyes of some, I personally do believe that KO Round 2 does manage to have enough personality to stand out on its own. I mean, KO went from kinda cute to one of the most adorable characters I've ever played as. His idle animations kill me. He's trying to spook me. Oh, after you beat an enemy for a couple of seconds, his running animation is different, like he's skipping around celebrating his victory. When you look through the first person view, he holds his boxing gloves up like binoculars, and you can see them pressed up against his face. And when you climb across the mesh ceiling, he doesn't use his hands, he uses his ears. And of course, it wouldn't be a KO game without the neck thing. Once again, when you go in a body of water, KO's neck will expand so his head is always above water so he can breathe. I still don't know why this is a thing, but I still love it to no end. While it may not play as great as Rayman, it definitely has a lot of personality, and that is something I will always look for in a game. Overall, it's really not half bad. I mean, it does stumble over a couple of things, the clunky combat especially, but I still thought it was pretty fun, even if it doesn't manage to be that challenging. I would recommend it over the first game any day. I mean, there's just a lot more going on here. It's easily the better game. If you're big into platformers and you're looking for more of those obscure B-grade platformers to play, this is definitely one you should check out. I really don't think it's that hard to find a copy of this game. I got mine on eBay for like $7. It's definitely a lot easier to find than the third game. Yeah, that's right. There's a third game. KO the Kangaroo was a trilogy, and if you haven't heard of KO 3, the reason is that it only came out in Poland. But before we check out that one and finish off the KO the Kangaroo marathon, I wanted to take a look at the portable versions of the games, KO the Kangaroo on Game Boy Advance and KO Challengers on the PSP. So next time we're going to be taking a look at KO's portable adventures. I'll see you guys then. The clunky combat especially, but it's